How do you see that playing out in some of these organizations?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you see why a fintech is much more innovative, much more nimble than a big bank, right? Is just, it's cultural. It is just, what does it take to get a product out the door, right? You basically go and have one conversation, and like, say you're a fintech, you have this great idea. You go shop your idea around with VCs, and all you need is one of them to say yes, and you're out running. At a big bank, right, you need to have multiple conversations, a traditional culture, you need to have multiple conversations, and all it takes is for one person to say no, and the idea is shut down, right? So you need a culture with that will empower people to take risks, right? And where, okay, let's just, sounds great, let's not kill it, look at it, let's put it out there and see what customers say versus we're the smart people in the room trying to decide if it will have legs or not. I think the other thing you see with startups is, don't over-engineer things. Most startups fail. Most products fail. Just get it out the door, put a minimal viable product out there, just build a prototype, and let the market, let the customer say what works, what doesn't work, pivot it and start building on that, or kill it as a result of real customer feedback. That's very different than the way traditional banks would put out products, where again, it's a one-year process, you write these big requirements, and then you get it out the door, and then it flops, right? Because it's not what customers wanted. So I think you need sort of a different way, and it's what you're starting to see the shift in some banks towards working more like a startup, right? Culturally, or creating small isolated groups that have that culture that start working like that. And I think the tone at the top where it works is it's very difficult to change the culture of a bank, right? So it's really creating the tone, the starting at the top is what will push down that cultural change into at least parts of the organization.
Jeff, it must be kind of a big challenge for you because it's not just the organization corporate at Morgan Stanley. You've got all these different advisors and they're all over the country. How have you helped the advisor network of Morgan Stanley adopt an openness towards this innovation or towards fintech?
Well, advisors want to, they want to advise. And I would actually argue that of all the things that my team has done over the last several years, is what we have found is that for all the digital stuff that we've done, which is tremendously accretive, the single best thing that an advisor can do is pick up the phone and actually call a customer. That is the most value added, and I can show you across 17 different dimensions why that's the case, from attrition and net acquired assets. That is the most valued thing. So part of what our model is using digital to create capacity. So eliminating the steps in account opening, automating requirement and distributions, processing dividends through a more automated way. And if we can do that, we actually, in some way, it's a backwards process, right? Because by creating digital, we're actually allowing them to do the old school thing, which right now is more valuable than any other thing that they can actually do.
And by the way, just out of curiosity, when you look at that and you say that's the value add, you find that also among younger, that the phone call actually works?
Yes, it actually does.
Oh my gosh.
Interestingly, people, even young people, like to talk occasionally. And by the way, it's not phone or email, right? It's a range. I mean, I want to be texted by my financial advisor sometimes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I want to have a conversation. And really, it's about choice. And it's not creating a model for the customer, it's creating the customer, creating the model, and then delivering against those expectations, which, by the way, can be wildly digital or wildly human or something in between, which is the reality is where most people sit is in the middle.
But you're also talking about building relationships, and that's something that you talked about, 3 years ago, that one of the, because I think I said to Hardeep, like, oh my God, these algorithms are going to get rid of the relationship of the client and the advisor, and you said, actually, no, human relationships are still going to be quite valuable, and maybe even more so, because as everything else gets commoditized.
Yeah, the question I get asked often is, if you guys from Silicon Valley are unleashed on Wall Street, what's left of Wall Street? If you could do your worst. And I think for us, relationship is really important. I have an advisor, and an advisor does more than just portfolio allocation. It's a really rich relationship, and what you've seen technology go after are very simple cases of portfolio allocation. But when you've got assets, complex situations in multiple countries, technology is not there. Human insight. Right? In any form, whether it's a money manager or even someone coming up with a new idea, what automated tools, for example, have done is just taken the bureaucracy and the mundane tasks out of it and made it simpler. But it really hasn't taken away human insight. And then the most important thing is tailored financial advice is hard. It's a really hard engineering problem, and we go in and we struggle with it every day. And that's going to take a long time before those aspects. But there's a lot of other stuff we haven't talked about. Rebalancing your portfolio, building standard asset allocation models, coming up with new technology models around how you build interesting indices that allow you to differentiate what one advisor offers from another advisor. So there are a lot of things. And to Eduardo's earlier point, one of the most important things I sit with a lot of large financials, the first thing I say to all of them, and it goes back to level setting culture. I start by saying, look, understand 1 month in your life is 1 year in mine. And if you don't seem to understand that, then we're just not going to be able to work together. And we've walked away from beautiful deals. My board goes, why'd you do that? They didn't appreciate the sense of urgency. And I think the advantage startups have is engineering talent. I mean, they're just very, very different beasts at startup versus big incumbent. And this urgency. And I think that what differentiates companies, large financials that have that sense of urgency, we see it and we actually want to partner with them because we have the same religion. And we want to go do interesting things together. And so we've been lucky to partner. And they're going to be big sources of revenue for us. But it's that connection on sense of urgency that's one of the most important things to look for.
Eduardo, what advice would you give when you were talking about some of those reactive institutions? What advice would you give someone who works at that institution about